Alright, here's our first video for the notes today. Alright.
I want to see someone like Hambone on stage. Who, like, you know, they do like the. Yes. Oh, yeah.
Whatever happened to little spoons and washboards, you know?
Jeez. Alright, anyway. Yesterday we left off with Ireland. Oh, wait, it's still first. Yeah. We left off with Ireland. We talked about how after the famine, it left a lot of bad taste in their mouths about how Britain treated them, and so it did give rise to nationalism after the fact. We talked about how there was the Irish Republican Brotherhood who started to do like this terrorist type activities in Ireland. The Fenians, exactly. So Britain actually will repress the Irish more as a result, but that just leads to more people wanting to become independent. So anyway, we talked yesterday briefly about them pressing for home rule, that finally in 1913, nationalists were able to get a home rule bill passed in Parliament, but it's right before World War I happens, and so it kind of gets shelved. And the Irish aren't happy about this, so basically they put it off because the war is about to break out. And also within Ireland itself, there was a divide. You had the Protestants, the Ulsterites, on one side, who were like the northern Protestants who wanted to stay with Britain and not go to a Catholic majority. And you had the Irish Catholics who ended up fighting like a civil war amongst themselves. We talked about the Ulsterites ended up raising a 100,000-man army to go fight against the Catholics. The House of Commons in Parliament tried to make a compromise bill, but the original bill passed with its implementation delayed. So basically they were like, all right, let's make some kind of compromise to make both sides happy. But the original bill passed and it was too late at that point. So essentially the war breaks out and they're like, okay, how are they going to get removed exactly? And then that all gets kind of shelved. So Ireland gets put on the back burner, but when World War I is over with, they're like right back trying to get back with their independence. So they'll finally become independent in the early 20s once it's all said and done. But there's still a lot of bad blood there even now because Ireland gets divided up. As we know, you're going to have Northern Ireland stay with Great Britain and will remain the UK, and the rest of Ireland will be independent, and then they're not going to be happy with that being split apart, so it's going to leave some bad blood. There's even fighting that goes on to today. Like, there's still a fighting that goes on up until now. Like U2, who's from Ireland, sings a bunch of songs about this in the 80s and stuff. So, yeah.
Gosh, that's true.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, questions about home rule or anything? What?
Oh, look at the skies.
But you see here the divide. Here's the Protestant Northern Ireland area. Then here you see.
Wait, isn't YouTube that one little the thing that's like they download on?
Yes.
Exactly. It was so annoying. I'd be like jamming out my music and I hear some random ass song.
They force it on you.
Yes.
All right. The Austro-Hungarian Empire. So, as a reminder, in the 1840s, it's still just Austria. So, when we left off last, there were some attempted revolutions in 1848 by their various ethnic minorities, but they failed, and they were still just Austria. It also forced who to resign in 48? The revolutions. What guy from Austria? Metternich, right? Sorry. Yes, you're right. So Metternich had to resign in 48 because of the... Huh? 1848. No, 1848. 1848, sorry. 1848. So anyway,
Why do you have to resign?
because they
nationalism so strong, they're gonna have to give in and basically give them more power, which leads to the creation of the dual monarchy in 1867. Okay, so after Austria was defeated by Prussia in 66 and lost northern Italy, they're weak. So basically now they're like their ethnic groups see this as a blood in the water, right? Chance to kind of seize the moment. So after Austria lost the war to Prussia in 66, as well as northern Italy, Austria agreed to a compromise with the Hungarians, because the Hungarians basically tried to press for them to become independent again and break off. And so they made a compromise. Instead, they basically created a dual monarchy, where Hungary will basically run itself and then kind of sort of report to the emperor. So they'll have like a king of Hungary within which is now called the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So the Magyars gained virtual independence for Hungary after they basically used the loss against Prussia against them. And so basically each half, the Austrian side and the Hungarian side, dealt with their own internal affairs. Because Austria didn't want to lose the people, but they still get to kind of let them have their own thing. So basically, Hungary rules itself over here, Austria rules itself over here. But when it comes to foreign affairs, they're one government. So when it comes to foreign affair or trade, they're one government. Correct. Yeah. So anyway, but each side had their own ethnic minorities, and neither one wanted to give up those territories as well. So like Hungarians, while they wanted their own independence, they had various ethnic minorities underneath them. They didn't want to give independence to them. And same thing for Austrians. So what's weird is that Franz Joseph will still be the emperor of the entire country. He's still the overall emperor of Austria and Hungary. But they rule themselves kind of differently when it comes to internal affairs. But when it comes to international affairs and foreign affairs, they're under one umbrella. If all makes sense. So anyway, so they share the same common monarch overall, and common like foreign affairs ministers and finance ministers and defense ministers and so on. What? Oh, there you go. See, the Lord works in mysterious ways.
No.
All right. In Austria, so look at the two different sides differently. In Austria, Germany was a third of the population, so they are the most dominant group, but they're not the majority of people. So in Austria, Germans make up a third of the population, so they're most dominant group, but they're not the majority of the population in Austria. The other minorities they had in Austria were Czechs, Poles, and Slavs. So Czechs, Poles, and Slavs were their other minorities they had. And they were also pushing for independence and self-rule. Poles and Slavs were also trying to push for independence as well, too. Austria also had a legislature, and with the growing sense of nationalism and the growing sense of more and more rights these guys want to have, it becomes harder and harder to govern. So going into the 1900s, the legislature is having a harder and harder time governing because their parliaments are like Britain, where you have to have a majority. And if you don't have a majority, you have to rule by what? What's the C word? We may never talk about this in here.
Wait, okay, so are we in Austria? And that's
We're still in Austria, yeah. So because you have so many different minorities here, they're all fighting for influence in their parliament. No one group dominates, so you have what's called a coalition government. Whenever you don't have one party dominate, you have to form a coalition government, meaning like different parties have to agree to work together and make like a common prime minister and stuff.
What was that?
Coalition government. Conservatives and socialists each tried to direct their focus on economic issues in Austria, but they failed to unify the groups. So conservatives and socialists each tried to focus on economic issues, but they failed to unify the groups in Austria. So Austria's just getting in a bad way. So going into the 1910s, Austria's kind of beginning to what? Fracturing, right? It's starting to fracture a little bit. Yeah, sort of. But people are taking their territory away That's the difference between them and Ottomans. All right, Hungary. In 1867, the Magyar nobility restored their Constitution of 48 and used it to dominate their peasants and minority populations.
What year?
67, when the dual monarchy started. So in 67, the Magyar nobility restored their constitution they had drawn up in 48 and used it to help dominate the Magyar peasantry and the minority populations until World War I broke out. So they're a little bit more of a Republican version of government in the Hungarian side, but only the wealthiest quarter males voted. So only the wealthiest quarter of males voted. So their minorities were Croats and Romanians, and Croats and Romanians were forced to use Magyar language in schools. So they try to also weed out or grow out the younger generations of the minority groups. So they push down Magyar language and culture and customs down to the Croats and the Romanians in schools and government. Radicals called for separation of Hungary completely from Austria. So radicals call for the complete separation of Hungary, but it doesn't happen just yet. It won't happen until World War I happens. But
Complete separation of Hungary
from Austria,
Okay.
correct? It's coming, but it's not going to happen for a few more decades. But just be aware that overall, I would think if you had a question about this, be aware of the fact that Austria had all these ethnic groups, and it wasn't until they lost to Austria that Hungary was finally able to use that against them to create this dual monarchy where they basically govern themselves within Austria. So all the area that's darker tan is Austria, everything that's in the white's Hungary. So, but they were one empire under one emperor leading to World War I.
My question is, did they find a new cut? Where they stopped?
Okay, all right. Let me stop right there. All right, anyway.
Just cry.
Here you also see the map that shows you all the different ethnic groups and kind of how they divide up this territory. So they bleed over into all different sorts of territories as well, too. They're not all one unified group. So it's going to make it hard when they were trying to do what's this area? Divide up into new countries, right? It's going to make it hard, very difficult. If that were ever to happen.
Yeah, which that's insane.
Right, exactly. All right. All right, building nationalism. Many European states face the challenge of growing national loyalty in the last third of the 1800s. This becomes kind of the theme of the back third of the 1800s. So many European states will face a challenge of growing national loyalty in the last third of the 1800s. Unification of Germany and Italy brought in a patchwork of states with different customs, loyalties, and languages. So many European states face the challenge of growing national loyalty in the last third, and the unification of Germany and Italy brought in a patchwork of states with different customs, loyalties, and languages. So even Italy, even though they're all Italian technically, doesn't mean they all have the exact same language or the same customs. They've been separate for centuries. And so now you're going to have the challenge of trying to do what to your country? Not just unify, but do it what as well?
What other language would they speak down there?
I mean, different versions of it. It's just like different dialects or different versions of it. Because you have pockets, right?
Yeah.
So the challenge is now trying to make a common language and a common culture. This is one of the reasons why France has their academy. For this very reason. That they,
Like the babies?
right, they had to try to drive out all these random words and try to make one unified language so that way you wouldn't have all this problem. So that's where it kind of comes from. We're going to stop the first video there.